Yeah, he's there. Go ahead.
Yeah, we all are there.
Smaraki, you are muted.
Yeah, sorry, sir. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on scaling, rescaling, and upscaling the need of the hour. I hope all of you are safe and healthy. I am Dr. Smariki Patnaik, Assistant Professor, ASBM University, and I'll be the moderator for the session. I'm very pleased to introduce you to the eminent speakers for the session. First, we have with us Colonel Ashwani Kumar Joshi. He has a spectacular and diverse experience of over 4 decades. He took premature retirement from the Indian Army in 2007 and migrated to the corporate sector as Chief HR Officer Gati Limited. Mr. Ashwini has been CEO of the Construction Skill Development Council of India, consultant with International Labour Organization, and currently director with Ernst& Young. He is passionate about developing human capital and currently he leads one of the largest projects in the vocational education and training in Bihar, which aims at skilling youth for sustainable livelihood. Mr. Ashwini is alumnus of Punjab University and IIM Ahmedabad. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Next, we have with us today Mr. Arvind Bali. He has robust leadership expertise of 37 plus years with a proficiency in the gamut of startups, global expansion, strategy planning, new initiatives, business operations, and productivity improvements. He is currently the CEO of Telecom Sector Skill Council, which is an industry led apex body, a not for profit organization by NSDC and telecom industry. TSSC is committed to develop world-class skilled manpower for the telecom industry and ensure adequate availability of ecosystem that ensures best of class skills training to boost growth and productivity in the telecom sector. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks.
We also have with us Dr. G.P. Rao. He has worked with SAIL, GK Group, Birla's, Reliance Group in India and Malaysia. He has done Masters in Commerce, Public Administration, Social Work and Business Management. He also has a degree in law and has received an honorary PhD. He is the recipient of several awards in India, Malaysia, Singapore, and Sri Lanka. He is associated with Rotary International Business Network, International Labour Laws Institute, NHRDN, etc., as advisor or office bearer. He has started his own consultancy, Good People Relations HR Consulting, since 2014, which provides business consulting, workplace synergy, and leadership development. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are really fortunate and elated to have with us such eminent speakers today. I welcome all of you again. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. First of all, I would request all the participants to please keep their audio and video off throughout the session. In case you have any questions, you can send that us, to through the chat box, and I'll bring them one up once all the panelists have spoken. Thank you. We are collectively experiencing an unprecedented time, a period that will be remembered for years to come and make it to every history book of the future. Apart from the massive stress of keeping themselves safe from their dreadful virus, employees are facing a unique challenge. The challenge of making themselves future proof and elevating their skill to fast track the economy when the pandemic resides. Also, huge section of the workforce is vulnerable to reduced income or layoffs as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. In fact, the 2018 Future of Jobs report from the World Economic Forum predicts that 75 million jobs will be displaced by 2022 in 20 major economies. At the same time, 133 million new roles are expected to be created by advances in technology and continuous digital transformation. Across the world, industries are being faced with skills gap. It's estimated that France will require 80,000 more IT and electronics workers than it will be available, while the US will have to deal with having 250,000 fewer data scientists that it needs. In the UK, 23% of people lack basic digital skills despite the fact that they are required for around 90% of all the new jobs. So, in this case, what can businesses do to stay afloat in this era of rapid change? One possible approach is to focus on upskilling and reskilling, treating your workforce flexible rather than only seeing each employee in a set role. This allows you to transform your workforce without having to hire anybody new, allowing you to better meet the challenges of modern day business. So, as demand for new competencies gather pace, reskilling and upscaling can facilitate an organization and also an individual to build up the skills which are required to be viable. And both can be considered effective strategies for employers to combat what is expected to be a perennial skills shortage. Considering this as a brief background set on the topic, I would like to request our first panel member, Colonel Ashwini Kumar Joshi, to share his views on the topic. Sir, please.
Thank you very much. So I think she's already started with the thing that the pandemic has actually created a colossal, it's a economic fall, where a lot of people have lost their jobs, and a new trend has started to that effect. And therefore, people are looking at it from a different point of view, whether they would be working remotely, they would have a hybrid workforce, or they need the workforce at all. And rightly what she has said earlier, that there's a lot of disruptive, the technology has disruptive trends, and what she is trying to say is that there are a lot of machines who are going to take on our roles, a lot of jobs are going to become surplus, and therefore there's a need for us. Firstly, upskilling and reskilling will come later, but let me first start with the skilling part of it. Skilling itself means that you have the cognitive skills, technical skills, and the people skills. And while I was the CEO of the Construction Skill Development Council, which is the second largest sector with a 45 million workforce, we found that only, pan-India, there are 10% people who are skilled. And out of this, only 3 to 4% have gone through a formal training. So really, we do not even know whether the people, whatsoever jobs they are doing, they're skilled to do their jobs or not. So that's a major challenge. And that's the reason then in July 2016, the Skill India mission was launched. And thereafter, the various programs, the STAR program, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, and other schemes took into effect. So that is the skilling part of it. Now, since the jobs are changing, and globally, people are requiring, workforce. Plus, we also need to be competitive, and there has to be Atmanirbhar Bharat, with a lot of foreign companies trying to come in here and set up their factories over here. So therefore, there is a need for the upskilling, which would mean that we will need to be more productive. We'll have to cut down our cost. We'll have to meet our timelines. We have to decrease accidents, etc., etc. So upskilling is actually you're trying to be in the same job line, but you're trying to skill to to perform better. Reskilling is entirely different, and that is why we are looking at it that when you should be now moving out for whatsoever you're doing and getting into another occupation. Now, while I was chief HR of Gati, we had done the succession planning, because rather than just being theoretical, I want to also tell you that we wanted to look at it, what are the leaders we should actually be developing, who will be our future, who will take on our future job roles, and who will build up the company to its goals. So I was involved in doing the succession planning, and thereafter we started looking at it, which are those guys which only need to be upskilled, which means they are trying to do the same job in a better way, and which are the guys where we do a cross-functional experience, where they are trying to move out, say, operational guy goes to the sales and sales to the finance, etc., etc. How is it that we give them other experience, cross-functional experience, or try to give them another experience so that the employability increases? So the reskilling is very, very important. Another aspect is the pandemic has actually cut down the timings of our upskilling and reskilling. It has shortened that bandwidth quite a bit. We also have to start looking at it that currently the organizations in the pandemic, they are trying to accelerate the digitalization of work processes, trying to provide more work from the remote, increasing the automation, increasing the digitization, and they are looking at it, what is it that is essential they need to have, and what is it that they can work from remote, and what are those which are non-essentials. So therefore, to see that there's a longevity of ourselves for the job, whether in the current or for the other jobs, we need to either upskill or need to reskill. And it also, for the organizations, it also helps us that for the retention of the employees, because a learning organization always engages the employees much more than those which are only doing the novel roles. I was also looking at the World Economic Forum 2020 report, where they were looking at which are the jobs which are coming over there. They're looking at cloud computing will be about 70%. And then they're looking at cybersecurity, encryption and cybersecurity to be another 29%. Artificial intelligence, 8%. Then they started looking at that e-commerce, robots, 10%, augmented virtual reality, distributed ledger technology, like your, blockchain, 11%, 3D, 4D modeling, etc., etc. So the point one is trying to say is that perhaps, and what Professor Smarky also brought up in the beginning, since the scenario of the jobs is changing, new jobs are occurring, and the current jobs are also, we need upskilling. So we need to be very, very focused. We need to analyze ourselves, assess ourselves. The organization need to look at it. What are the goals which are going to happen? What is the scenario, globally, and how they're going to compete, and how are they trying to build up their workforce so that they remain competitive and differentiate so that the business remains profitable. So far, so good, man.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would just like to thank you for beautifully putting things together and explaining us the basic difference between all the three concepts that we have taken as a topic of discussion today. And you've also linked it to, a learning organization and how engagement is very essential. Thank you again, sir. Now, moving forward, I would request Bali, sir, to please go ahead with his deliberation.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks a lot for inviting me for this panel discussion. This topic is very close to our heart because we do this all the time, scaling, upscaling, rescaling. This is our full-time job these days, right? So as Joshi Saab has just mentioned that, as a nation, as a nation, there are a lot of things which are priority, but definitely, I think skill is a priority, and Skill India mission, which was started a few years back. Basic purpose is that we have got such a large youth which are there in the country, and all of them need to be very well employed. They can become like a resource which doesn't only support India with the all manpower needs, but it is also a resource which can be available for various countries. There are countries, which are actually starving for youth, young workforce. So first of all, when we talk about skill, I think this importance of skill has been realized, in my opinion, quite late in this country. I go back to the time, when I passed out from engineering college in 1982. There was a very big gap between education and reality, like whatsoever actually was happening in the industry. We saw that there was a very big gap. And most of our time, what we were studying in college, when we were coming to the jobs, there was no relevance or there was no relationship to it. first time when I went to US, like some of the things which we have studied in college, that was maybe after 10 years, I saw, my God, these things have got some practical use also. Because till that time, I only thought there is something like some theory or some Pythagoras theorem or binomial theorem. We didn't even know, why it is used, what is the real purpose. But that was a time, when we came to know. So the point I'm saying, same thing, original curriculums had all that there should be a lot of importance to the skills. But I think somewhere we got lost and a lot of focus was on just education. But real skill was actually missing, and the importance of skill was something which was missing. Even today, what we find that there is a very big difference in workmanship when we see a skilled worker from India and skilled worker from developed country. The quality of work what skilled worker in developed country do, as compared to that, I think we are nowhere. And I think we have to teach our workforce all those things. And as a nation, we are really trying to do all that. Now, the topic is that actually skilling, reskilling, upskilling, in the changing time, what is its value and importance. So first of all, I would just like to share with you, because I come from telecom and I've worked in telecom industry, and I've got very keen interest in what's happening around the world. And I'm very fortunate that I'm always associated or linked with the latest technologies that is happening around the world. So a lot of you must be wondering, there's a lot of importance, a lot of talk happening on 5G, 5G is required, 5G is really very critical for this country, for the world, a lot of work is happening, a lot of discussions are happening. But on the other hand, some of us really question ourselves, I think we have got now 4G, which gives very good speed and everything is there, why really we need 5G? There's no limit to keep increasing the speed, but what is the use? So the actual use of 5G is that, you can have a lot of interactive, you can have a lot of work which has latencies free and all that. So to give you a small background to it, every year there is a Mobile World Congress that is on development and telecom. So the last Congress what I attended was Mobile World Congress in Shanghai. And there, the theme was 5G, as most of the world congresses, what they're talking. And the most interesting part was that at least 30-40% of the companies who were working on 5G, they were showing the usage and application, and it was all related to education and skilling. It was something very, very surprising for me. And as you may be knowing that when it comes to urban and rural divide, even China has got the similar issue that we have got. And this exhibition was in Shanghai, so a lot of Chinese companies were participating in that. And one thing they were talking that with 5G, they'll be able to take education, scaling to the real remote areas of the country. They'll be able to have teachers who can teach the students in just one go, millions of students everywhere, and that is the talk which was going on. To my real surprise at that time, they were actually talking about that with time, the gap between a student which studies in a metro versus a student which studies in a very, very remote area, they won't find any difference, and that's what is was expected. And the most pleasing part is, this discussion was happening in 2019, and we didn't have this pandemic issue. And when we had this issue, suddenly there was a big need of having online education. Statistics says that presently 1.2 billion students are using online learning and coaching. And when this is happening, that is a time when most of the skill councils are also thinking that if education is happening on that, why can't we do scaling also on that? Now, some of you may have this query that, there's a difference between education and skill. In the case of skill, you have to demonstrate the product. There has to be touch and feel of the product and multiple dimensions you have to see. So we have done some analysis. Telecom Sector Skill Council is very seriously working on this aspect of e-learning, basically e-skilling. So on that, what we have found is that when you really analyze our job roles, there are a lot of job roles which actually are the job roles which can be like more like an academic and more like where you can just study and you can experience it. But when it comes to real difficult job roles, today's biggest challenge is even a lot of training partners are not able to replicate or provide the facility to the trainers or the people who are actually getting training. So with technology, with the advanced technology of AR, VR, immersive technologies, and also 360-degree videos, if you have, you actually create a environment. I love to give this example. We have a job role which is on tower technician. Now, tower technician is supposed to climb those 25, 30, 40-meter towers, and they have to actually repair the antenna, adjust the direction of the antenna. So those kind of jobs are there. Now, in reality, it is very difficult for any training partner to really create that infrastructure, and they have to depend upon industry to allow such youth to go to the towers. And even they are taken there, there's no way, like you can let them touch the equipment or actually get the feel of it. With AR, VR or 360-degree videos, you can actually demonstrate to them that how and what kind of effects you have got when you actually climb that 30, 25 or 30-meter tower. You actually see that. And you can really move around, you can get a feel of it. You also have even demos of, what kind of problems you can have if you don't wear the right kind of belt, what kind of fall you can have. All those kind of things you can really build up in this and actually create an environment. So I'm not saying that it can replace totally the real on-the-job training, but at least before the joining a job, at least 95% or 98% exposure these people have got. And that is the reason at Telecom Sector Skill Council, all our job roles, we have actually made it supported by audiovisual videos. All our offer on, just to give them a better exposure, we are giving to all our training partners and making it compulsory for them that whenever they are teaching, they are also to give audiovisual video clips to all the trainees, right? The other step which we are taking is that when we are talking about reskilling, like people who have been trained on 2G, 3G, and now have to be trained on 4G or 5G, I think we use more of our technology because these people, they already have basic knowledge. They have to be taken to a higher level, and they enjoy this only when we are able to give them something better. We are able to actually give them some new tools which they find it much better. So all that work is happening, and I think I'll in the following talks I'll also mention some of the things which will come out during the discussion. But definitely this is a very, very good topic you guys have chosen, and I'm really very happy to be part of this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You very well stated that earlier we only used to talk and teach about distance learning or computer-based learning and training. But due to this pandemic, and we have got a big push, and we are all operating through a virtual network. And you've also connected it to e-skilling and how it works. So thank you very much for giving us such a comprehensive yet very concise address. Thank you, sir. Moving ahead, I would like to request GP sir to please move ahead with his deliberation.
Yeah, thank you. Let me take the privilege of wishing Dr. Biswajit Patnaik, President, ASPM University, our co-panelist Colonel Joshi, Arvind Baliji, and the anchor Smarky. The topic has actually resonating with me. Let's talk about skilling. So I had some knowledge that I wanted to share in 10 minutes, but by the time my turn has come, that has been spoken. That means what I know is no more needed. Then I thought, while they're speaking, I was taking notes. Maybe instead of becoming a panelist, let me become a participant, ask them some questions. So I was thinking about reskilling myself. But then they finished on time, so I had not that opportunity of skipping that role of a panelist. Then I thought maybe I'll upskill myself. Instead of speaking what they have already spoken, let me try and bring out something new from an industry perspective. Let me start with what I have learned from them is the future of work has changed. The future of workplace has changed. The future of workforce composition has changed. This requires new skills, reskilling, and upskilling. And there is a need in the competitive world for leapfrogging in productivity. It's not number of people getting skilled, it's the right kind of people getting skilled. That's what I noted down when they said. They also talked about the growth boosters, skilling for future job. Wonderful definition by Colonel Saab on skilling, reskilling, upskilling. I was resonating. Skilling is about creating the potential people who will be useful for the jobs. The reskilling is for redeployment. I mean, if he's not fit here, can he be fit somewhere else? Upskilling in the same job with advanced skill. That's what I've noted down. And also, I took that what is important in the competitive world is quality, speed, and efficiency. And new jobs are coming. So, what would we be required will be now the what are the skill gaps? Now, let me come to my part of it. There are so many jobs have come, whether the World Economic Forum has alerted us that 75 million jobs will go. They also said so many new jobs come. Let us be optimistic. Like pandemic, no, you can brood over the pandemic that everything is gone. You can also see the opportunity the pandemic has brought. Now you see thousands and thousands of people are getting skilled using online program, which was not thought about. I mean, similarly, there are so many new opportunities are coming in, new kind of jobs are coming in the health sector, safety sector, online sector, e-education sector, which all came after the pandemic. So everywhere there is some kind of difficulty, some kind of opportunity. I will come straight to the industry perspective. Now, the skilling is one area where industry cannot do it alone. We need the government, the skill development centers, the educational institutions. But when it comes to the reskilling and upskilling, it is primarily the industry responsibility. It is the organizational responsibility because they're already inside. The employee is already in. So the reskilling and upskilling, so it is the organization and the service provider. Right kind of trainers, right type of service providers, or online experts. So all that will be done. But when it comes to the skilling, that is where the numbers, jobs, that World Economic Forum calling the reskilling, some revolution and all, or or when 2016, when the skilling initiative brought about, it's talking about millions of people getting skilled. So what we should do or what we are doing, I mean, wherever I am consulting, and particularly in the automobile sector, in the pharma sector, in the other manufacturing sector, we are working with the skill development centers or articulating what is required. Many times, in fact, one of the minister, I will not quote his name, he said, in one particular sector, the number of people skilled and the number of people got jobs, the percentage is only 12%, as low as 12%. Why it is happening? Because one is the need identification is not what's shared. So need identification has to be shared by the industry with the skill producing institutions, whether it is a college or a university, an institute or a skill development center. That is number one. Number two is the skills are made for the current jobs. If you prepare skills for the current jobs, by the time you come to the market, by the time you come to the competitive world, your skill will become obsolete. So we have to skill for future. That is the second one. The third one is how much of skilling is primary, how much of skilling is secondary. There are certain skills the organization has to do. Like in engineering college, in diploma college, in medical colleges, the industry gets into the curriculum. So can the industry be a part of the skilling initiatives of the institution, whether it's engineering or IT or a skill development center, that the industry gets into the curriculum delivery so that so the skill match, the need, the synchronization, the synergy would happen. So that is the third thing. And the last thing will be identifying which areas we generally tend to limit ourselves to technology. I'm not saying technology is not important. Robotics, industrial automation, podcast, 3D, solar, all that is right, it's there. But then in the actual world, it is not only the functional skill, it is the behavioral skill that gives an edge to an employee in succeeding in the organization. So that is one area. Online can be a great means to fulfill the gap. So when we're talking about the behavioral one, we are not talking about presentation skills. We are talking about cross-cultural inclusiveness. We are talking about adaptability. We are talking of resilience. We are talking creative thinking. We are talking critical thinking. We are talking design thinking. Those kind of areas, that doesn't require a workshop, that doesn't require simulators. It is simple things. But then over the period, once the online format has come, two important revelations have happened. Number one, the learner now doesn't allow you to take 6 hours workshops. He has told the trainers that his tenacity is low. So now the training providers, these areas will have to keep it simple and short. That's number one. Number two, in the online structure, the learner is missing the fun of the physical atmosphere, the fun of having company of others. So the teacher or the trainer has to take care of providing that participant engagement, that he has to make it as interesting as possible. Number three is the content. The content has to be customer centric. Here it's to be learning centric. So it's like maybe you can tell them what is will be taught in the tomorrow. He will get ready and come with the questions rather than repeating the same PowerPoint. So I will, to conclude what I said was, I have noted down what our co-panelists have spoken about, the need for skilling, reskilling and upskilling, because there's a lot of change in the work, change in the workplace, change in the workflows. A lot of new jobs have come, a lot of old jobs will go away. Skill is important, but skill for future is important. From the industry perspective, reskilling and upskilling, it will be primarily driven by the industry with the help of the service providers. But skilling is something government, academia, and industry, all three have to work together in synergy by giving focus to identification of the skills, identification of the skill gaps, identification of the skill in future, getting into the curriculum, co-deliver the learnings, and then prepare the numbers for the skilling, so that when we want to leapfrog, make that 1.5% increase in the productivity year on year, if we want to do that, and give that quality, speed, and efficiency in what we do, and we want to be the Atmanirbhar and also want to be globally competitive, then we'll have to do these three things. With that, I'll take a break. Thank you. Thank you, Smarati.
Thank you, sir. You've indeed made my task a little easier, because first of all, you refreshed our memories regarding what Ashwini sir and what Arvind sir had stated. And with that, you also gave a very holistic idea, and you talked about the nitty-gritties, keeping in view the industry perspective, which is the most important part. Thank you very much, sir. Now we would like to take few questions for the participants. In fact, I can see few questions here. The first question is from Mr. Jyoti Ranjan Mahanti. He says prior to upskilling and reskilling, it is important to go for some form of need identification in terms of skill gaps across sectors and trade. So his question is, who should do that? What is the individual's role? What is the organization's role? And what's the government's role? So anyone, if you wish to take this question.
Yeah, so as far as we are concerned, I know that his question really wants to know actually who should be doing this skill gap study. But I think, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter who is doing it, because I think the most important part is whosoever is really well connected to the industry should do that. Maybe you need to add some little bit of structure. So for telecom, we have done and we keep doing it on a very regular basis. And we have to also do it because the biggest challenge what we face, a lot of people that a lot of people believe that telecom is shrinking and there are only three operators, three tower companies, and three equipment suppliers. So there are very few companies who are in tower business. But in reality, there are 5,000 companies who are directly or indirectly linked to telecom. And then also jobs, our nature of job is changing, but actually the growth is there because every now and then we see the usage is increasing, FTTH is increasing, fiber to home, all those things, all those segments are really growing. So demand is growing. So we conduct that study very regularly. And then also, I also know CEOs of some other skill councils, they do that study. Plus, I think Mr. Joshi can probably throw more light because he's related of consulting as well as like skill mission. So they also, I think, they engaged out of big force and they actually get that study done. I think Joshi, you can throw more light on that.
Thank you, Balaji. So let me first of all congratulate ASBM.
I think there's some mics which are on. Can you?
Yes, sir. GP sir, can you please mute your mic? Yeah, thank you. Sir, please.
So let me congratulate ASBM. The foresight of the president ASBM, I'm talking about 2008, while I was chief HR of Gati, and what we have been talking, that how the industry's curriculum could be validated and how the industry leaders come and be part of the faculty or the guest speakers in the ASBM. And there was a logistics chapter which was opened in ASBM, and my managing director, Mr. Mahendra Agarwal, that time, and Patnaik sir, we all decided that this is what we need for skills which are required for the people who have to go to the supply chain or the logistics sector. And we used to keep reviewing those lectures. So I think what we are talking today, it was done by ASBM 12 years earlier. The second part which one is asking is, what is the skill gap? I think we have to start around what is the aspiration of the youth who wants the skill gap to be there. That is the start point. And then he starts looking at it, whether it is an employee who is already a worker, or whether it is a person who is in the education sector who is studying. So both have to decide that this is what they have to, this is what the organizations require. And the best assessor can be the person themselves, because no one can tell you better than a person who is already, who knows himself much better than anyone else. Then, of course, there are assessments and development center tests, etc., who can tell you what are the competency gaps. So your first question is, who will tell you the skill gap? I think the first is your aspiration, your counseling, that you want to be there. Then, of course, what Bali Sahib is saying, that, and let me not tell only on the vocational education point of view, that what is the skill gap which is required. I think everywhere the skill gap is required. So whether it is in the education sector also, what is skill gap required? For example, when we talked earlier and the National Skill Qualification Framework came into place, so NSQF talks about more of the outcome. It doesn't talk about the knowledge. It says, okay, you have the knowledge, but for the level for which you are getting skilled, say for a level 6 who comes as an engineer or a management trainee, can you deliver the job roles for what you are getting recruited for? So it is very, very important for us that we look at ourselves and then at what the industry is requiring. And of course, what Balaji is saying, that Big Four or any other people, industry leaders and HR leaders, advisory firms, they all get into all this domain because everyone looks at it that this is what industry needs and this is what we are skilling. Skilling doesn't only mean vocational, skilling means even education. So are we meeting? If today the STEM is a requirement, is educate focus on the STEM is there or not? So you have to start looking at those skill gaps and then start moderating. And one more thing before I finish off this part, because let the others speak. You see, the adaptability and the learnability of each one of us, it plays a very, very important part because there should be a yearning to learn. No one has to teach you. You have to teach yourself. You have to look at your assessments. You have to set up your goals, what you want to be there. Others can only help you reaching their goals. Ultimately, it is you who have to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Smarky, on the specific question on who is responsible for reskilling and upskilling, with the gig format getting in, gig is no more for workers. It is an interim manager's concept. So the more and more people will be on their own. They will be on their gig format, working for more than one organization, working for a few hours, working on part-time, so working flexibly. So the responsibility will go slowly, will go to the individual. Currently, it is at the organization level. The responsibility of reskilling and upskilling. Currently at the organization level, slowly it will move towards the individual, more and more.
Right, sir. Sir, there is one question specifically for you, Mr. GP Rao. It is
Yes.
being asked by Mr. Guru Prasad Das. He is
Okay.
asking that what are the skills which helps the manager to relate with their fellow workers and know how to deal well with their subordinates?
No, it is nothing to do with skill and reskilling. It is pure management and leadership. No. Good managers are very empathetic. Good managers are very empowering. No. Good managers are enabling. No, the three things. No. See, if you are empathetic, you will really understand what motivates that person, what is actual need, and he will come and have a session and very free and frank feedback session with you. What will help him to do better? So he will come and share with you. That will be empathy. Empowerment is when you give them the direction, give them the freedom, and give them the feeling of support. He will start working on his own and he will experiment. He will make mistakes and he will try out, do things. Enablement is you should take the responsibility as a manager that I am supposed to make my people more competent, more motivated, most compliant so that they will better. If I do this role, these are the three things if a manager as a leader has got, he will make more and more of leaders in his team.
Thank you,
It is
sir.
more generic actually.
So there's another question from Mr. Sunil Abrol. He is asking the biggest challenge in skill development is quality trainers, delivery, and assessment. So what strategy has been used by TSSC? So Arvind sir, maybe. Sir, sir, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very good question. Since last year, my biggest focus is definitely to take the quality of our assessment very high. So what we have done, we increase our interaction with all our assessment partners. We are evaluating the technology and we are trying to see that, we use the best possible tools, best possible methodology to assess the student. But I think by just only assessing, you cannot really ensure the good quality of manpower and ultimately, like quality of skill. If you have to see the multiple things you have to do, one, definitely you need a lot of discipline, lot of care, good trainers. All that work is happening, and I think a lot of people are doing. In my opinion, those are actually very, very basic hygiene. The one big change which Telecom Sector Skill Council is bringing is, I believe that the moment I start interacting more with the industry. And fortunately, I come from the industry and I've got all my friends, CEOs of various companies. I'm interacting with them. So I'm going to them and checking with them what are their manpower requirements. I'm actually taking mandates from those companies that this is what they need. Like, for example, we have a job role which is like handset repair engineer, right? Or technician. That is a job role. So earlier, we were just skilling people, and then, once they were skilled, trained, certified, we were looking placement for them. Sometimes they were getting placed, sometimes they were not, and they were actually trying to do something of their own. But now we are in touch with Apple, we are in touch with Cashify and a lot of companies, Oppo, Vivo, and we are asking them, give us your need, actually, what kind of people you need in, say, next 6 months or 1 year. They give us the projections, area-wise, location-wise. And while the training is going on, we make sure that all those people are skilled so that they ultimately are placed in those companies. The biggest, they say that the best taste of any pudding is in eating. Similarly, the best test for any good skilling is the placement. If supposing Airtel, Jio, Indus Tower, all these companies, they accept any skilled manpower which has been certified by us, that means that actually we are sure that we are given the good quality. So ultimately, it causes a back pressure, and we are able to make the right kind of assessment. We are able to ensure the right kind of training. We ensure that the right kind of trainers are there. So her complete ecosystem is actually addressed, and that is what we are doing. So it is a never-ending process, and a lot of work has to happen. It is just, I'll say, the work had started, but unfortunately, we lost this 7, 8 months because of pandemic. But definitely, when work starts again, we'll be able to show some real good work to the industry on that field.
Right, sir. So there's a question from Mr. Vineet Kumar. He is asking that we need to transform our education system. So can online education solve the issues as far as skills are concerned?
Yeah, so I think touched this point when I was telling you, really. So as the technology is changing very fast. Like with 5G and bandwidths, and fiber reaching to remote areas and rural areas, the benefit and advantage of online skilling is that you can choose the best trainers. Lot of content you can pre-record or pre-prepare and share it with uniformly with all the students, all the trainees at the same time, irrespective of whether he is in Gurgaon or he is in Leh Ladakh or in Northeast, anywhere, like the same quality of teaching happens. Then also through online, supposing some good teachers are not willing to go to Leh Ladakh or far-flung areas, they can also teach youth of those remote areas sitting in Gurgaon through all this blackboard technologies and everything what is so relevant there. Another point which I was saying that as the need is emerging, like supposing if an environment comes where it is still not possible that each and every facility cannot be replicated. Like for example, I cannot take practically all my trainees to say a Samsung factory to show them like how a factory works. But I can always make a 360-degree video and which I can just put it on their eyes through AR VR device, and then like they can see as if they are actually in the factory. So I can create that. To our example I gave, we can actually replicate and create that. We can also even make that if supposing SMT machine is there, how does SMT machine works, and like you can actually have a touch and feel kind of an arrangement there, right? And you can learn that. So it is emerging every day. New and new fields are coming. So in my opinion, yes, like number one, it will become much better when it comes to online learning, and also I would say that the quality will increase or improve. And the best part is the quality in tier 3, tier 4 towns will dramatically change, will dramatically improve, and lot of migrant workers, lot of skilled workers, they actually come from tier 3, tier 4 towns. So that way it is really very useful. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Okay. There's another question from Mr. Amlan Jena. He's asking, since the advent of AI and machine learning industries across the board have seemingly jumped on the bandwagon and have readily incorporated them, and it is believed it has shown positive yield in terms of organizations' revenue. His question is that AI is looking to take over the functioning of organizations overall. So, are we looking at a industrial revolution parallel where human intervention and physically deployable skill will become redundant, and the spectrum of skill will narrow down to IT and software sector only?
Yeah, again, I think very complex and good question. And I think this is not only related to, I'll say, skill, it is actually related to any field. You know, whenever the work on computers or software happens, any development happens, I think that is a question which we all ask. I remember my father and grandfather's time, right? They were able to do complex calculation without any calculator, and our generation saw the calculators. And now the new generation have got mobile calculator, and they have got laptops and everything, so complex calculations they can do it. So, but is it making human being weaker or something? And in my opinion, it is not. Is it really impacting the quality of overall the services or the things what we are using? I think it is not. Only thing is, yes, there is a shift which is happening. The way, you know, we are seeing the shift that if supposing e-retail is catching up, the jobs are moving from a store salesman to maybe a delivery boy or in-house service what people are providing. Same way, you know, even in factories, if a lot of computers are coming, then yes, maybe some shop jobs are reducing, but jobs are changing actually. So it is going to happen. So specifically answering to his question that will it only reduce it to some limited courses? In my opinion, that is not true because artificial intelligence can do a lot of things. But supposing, you know, like we have got food industry or we have got automobile industry or we have got labor intensive various other industries or for that matter healthcare and all. I think everywhere human brain and people are required. Only thing is a shift here and there. So it will not actually replace human skills, but yes, it will aid humans for avoiding unnecessary work for which, you know, like earlier they were to really put a lot of effort. Thank you.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir. I have a specific question to Ashwini, sir. Sir, while preparing for my, this webinars, I came across a report, 2019 report from Willy Education Services and Future Workplace. That particular report, it indicated that around 68% of employers, they promote the value of upskilling to their employees, but less than half of them invest more than $500 per year, to upskill each employee. So this is very unfortunate. Thinking about or given the high cost of hiring a new employee versus the relatively low cost of upskilling or reskilling a current employee. So what do you have to say about that, sir?
You see, we are talking in today's age where we are looking at leaner organizations which are more productive, more cost efficient, and can bring out the quality of the work. Again, if you look at the PwC report for the workforce of 2030, and let me again get back to the World Economic Forum report, and there were actual Professor Rao will be able to tell you. It tells you that a lot of organizations are investing on upskilling their workforce, and the ROI of 60%, they are 60% of the companies are saying that the ROI for upskilling the workforce, they get it within 1 year itself. So I think it is a wrong notion that by upskilling we are we are trying to waste out our money. I think the companies should actually be investing on their people for upskilling. And let me give you one more aspect from an HR perspective. It's very important for a company people to get merged with the culture of the company. Uh, and I'll take you slightly away. Gati was a 2PL company. I started recruiting people from the INs over there. So then I started looking at it that, while they were, and we were moving from 2PL to 3PL. So perhaps I was targeting a wrong, academic institution over there. And then we slowly looked at it, and there was so much of attrition. For example, the people which I got from ISB or INs, and I never used to go to Ahmedabad earlier, but I used to go say Kazikot or Indore, so that these were the young rising INs, so that I can get them, or Guwahati, Shillong. But the culture plays very, very important part, and you are not skilling the people to lose them. You are actually managing your people, you are upskilling them, that whatsoever you invested on them, they get retained. And therefore, the loyalty of your employees to look after the welfare and the growth of the company is equally important. And therefore, I would say investing on your employees for upskilling is extremely important. And the ROI will come to you very, very fast. Attrition is a huge cost, and perhaps you'll be losing more than recruiting the new people for the same talent.
Right, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Partharay, can you mute yourself, Mr. Partharay?
Yes, please, Mr. Partharay.
Yeah, Partharay, I'm requesting him to mute. A little addition, Smarki.
Yes, sir,
There was a lot of debate around artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all. I always believe and recommend that consider that as augmented intelligence. Okay, it is just adding to you. So automation, digitalization, all that will make your job easier, speedier, convenient, flexible, accurate. These are the things. You just take it as addition. Never bother that all these things will take away jobs. Even if it take away jobs somewhere, it will create jobs somewhere else. I mean, they have developer, they have maintenance, they have creator, they have upgradation. A lot of jobs will happen. Now, coming to this investment in the upskilling and all, this is all about mindset and skill set. I'm using these two words because many of the companies, owners, entrepreneurs, they do not see the benefit of investing in people. So the HR has to play an important role of influencing the decision maker that this investment will be beneficial in the long run, besides your commitment to human resource development. That is number one. Number two, I'm saying skill set. Even if you have the mindset and the money, many people do not know how to do this skilling, upskilling, and reskilling. So that is where I'm coming, the skill set. Those technologies are available, service providers are available, consultants are available, institutions are available. We should take a benefit of that. That's all.
Hello. Sir, am I audible?
Yep.
Yes, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, so I will just take one last question from the participants. It is from Mr. Parth Rai. He says that what about industry-university collaboration? The industry will inform the university about their requirement of skills, and the university will prepare the students according in conjunction with its research department and the R&D revision of the industry.
No, that is, we are not getting into the operation. As a principle, as an approach, yes, that is the thing. That is the thing. There's no other way. That is the way industry and academia must work together. That's the way.
And
Right, sir.
now even skill councils are playing a very, very important role because we have got access to our specified special industries, and we are also having academia division. We are all in touch with universities and colleges, and we share our vision. We also share the actual data with them, and also we help them in placement. Like for example, we have started telcojob.in, like a portal where we are going to each and every college and telling that all pass out students they should register themselves on this portal, and we have got in that portal total segmented information available of this ICT sector. And from there, even student, if if they get registered earlier, they can even see what are the big demands coming. Like one very important critical point, I think I'll just take 2 minutes to explain that. uh, the way education is structured, like there is a curriculum, and as per that curriculum, and curricular revision takes always a lot of time, whereas industry changes very fast, right? And because industry changes very fast, so there are always needs of some specific kind of jobs and requirements. And today, the beauty is that all those requirements you can meet by doing a short course. There are a lot of online courses available. There are always a lot of short-term courses are available. So we are also even supporting colleges on those short-term programs. Just to give an example, like people have done electronic, mechanical, electrical, any engineering, but supposing just a hypothetical case that there is a big requirement which is coming of applications related to drones, right, in various sectors. So there are some short-term programs available on drones or drone-related technology, and people can take those short courses and they immediately get employable. They get their chance of getting better salaries and better jobs. So all those things are happening, and as a skill council, I think we are playing a very critical role in that part. Thank you.
So, before concluding, I would just like to mention few takeaways from the session that I have come across. So, not to mention that there's no way of tiptoeing around now, as in the present moment for most people, job security is on the decline and the unemployment is hiking. So, a menacing truth that we have had to come in terms, with has been that a lot of what happens next to the global economy and the job market is actually out of control. So the best any of us can do is start anticipating what may come and begin strategically planning our next move. So now is as good a time as any to become familiar with upscaling and rescaling. By upscaling and rescaling the workforce with collaborative learning opportunities, the easily accessible cross training and mobile learning, one can still achieve ambitious goals with lower headcount. So, learning opportunities such as these will identify the most agile leaders who the organizations would intend to keep after the COVID-19 actually stops wreaking havoc. So, in retaining the top talent, as also mentioned by our panelists, retaining the top talent through the hard times is also very important. So that once you are back to business as usual, you are able to scale up as quickly as possible with the best talent in tow. So your remaining top talent will be pivotal in helping you quickly restore your organization's former glory by sharing their knowledge with the new hires. So all said and done, I would like to conclude by saying that it won't be wrong on my part to say that a pandemic or no pandemic, looking at the volatile and dynamic business environment that we actually operate in, reskilling and upskilling can enable an individual along with an organization to develop the skills that are needed to remain relevant and competitive. So, with these few words as takeaway, I would like to thank all our panelists for accepting our invitation and for sharing their views and thoughts with us. It is very essential in such difficult and trying times. So I thank all the participants also for their kind support, and thank you. Finally, I would also like to thank my IT team for all their support and cooperation. The feedback link has been shared in the chat box. Thank you again. Thanks again for joining us today. I wish you all good health, and we will see you next time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Thanks a
Thank you.
lot.
Thank you,
Thank you
Arvindji.
very much.
Thank you,
Very kind,
sir. Thank you,
everyone.
Smarty. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Everybody, sir. Happy Diwali.
you.
Happy
Happy Diwali.
Diwali to all of you. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, sir.